Well, welcome back to another episode of Agent Success Secrets. And today, my special guest is Kim Zuroff. Kim, you have been in the real estate business for 15 years, and I feel like I have known you almost all of those years.
I'm pretty sure it's been all 15.
It has.
If
And
not, it's been 13 or 14.
yeah, a long, long time. It has been so fun to watch you grow. And this is why I just believe you have so much value to share with so many from all the different roles and hats that you've worn inside of the real estate industry. And now you've got a fun new gig that I think is pretty awesome too. So just tell everyone who you are, where you are, and what you do.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Jenny. And it's an honor to be here today. I'm super excited about this conversation. And I'd love for it to be a conversation. I know we have open Q&A and just a casual mastermind at the end, but if you have questions along the way, throw them in the chat, and I'm super happy to answer whatever I can. So a bit of my backstory. So my name is Kim Zuroff, and I am the Director of Growth at The One Thing Book. What does the Director of Growth do? I grow and scale the training, coaching, consulting company behind the book. So I do a lot of consulting. I do a lot of executive coaching, mostly outside of the real estate industry, which has been a really big shift and a big growth for me personally and professionally. For the last 15 years, like Jenny mentioned, I have been with Keller Williams. I joined Keller Williams when I was 20 years old, and in Fargo, North Dakota. I started off as an agent. And I built a team, and then I became a productivity coach. I became one of the top productivity coaches that Keller Williams had back in 2013. And then I was invited by Diana Kokoska to become a MAPS Bold coach. So in 2014, I became a MAPS Bold coach. And I did that for a period of time until the defining moment for me to step out of Bold coaching was I fell asleep in the Las Vegas airport right before boarding. And that was my sign that I was just kind of burnt out from being on the road. And so did you know about that, Jenny?
I did not, but I love that story.
Yeah, I fell asleep right at the gate. My flight was boarding, and I had noise canceling headphones in, and I was so burnt out. I had my fourth bold of the week, and I had just I fell asleep, and I woke up at 3 a.m. to an empty airport. Like, I was so tired that I fell asleep for about 5 hours, and nobody woke me up. Which that's a whole different story of I'm at my gate, I miss whatever. Anyways. So I stopped being a bold coach mainly because I was tired of being on the road. And so I was invited to become a team leader, and I agreed to be a team leader for 1 year, and that 1 year turned into 9. And so I spent several years recruiting, coaching, consulting. I attracted around 1,000 agents to Keller Williams, built and scaled 2 brokerages here in the Maryland, D.C. area. I am an investor in one of them today. And along that, built several ancillaries, coaching businesses, title, mortgage, insurance, you name it, we built it. And then in 2014, I decided my time as a team leader was coming to a close. And for a long time, I had known Jay Papasan. We'd been friends pretty much my whole journey inside of Keller Williams. He watched me live and breathe the principles of the One Thing to build what I built. And he had asked if I would be his first call if I ever chose to do something different. And so I called him in April of 2014, and he was just like, when are you coming to Austin? So my next flight to Austin, and then he offered me the opportunity to be the Director of Growth with him and Gary as their partners at The One Thing. So that's kind of my backstory of why I'm doing what I'm doing, where I'm at today. I'm based out of Maryland, D.C., and yet my second home base is kind of a Marriott again. Which it's way less than bold coaching, and it's on my own terms, which is pretty awesome. So today's conversation, which I'm so thrilled about, is Jenny mentioned that we're talking a lot about alignment, and there's a few fundamental things inside of the One Thing that you may have heard before, and yet today will serve as really good reminders to help you live purposely, get aligned, and achieve the productivity that you're looking to achieve this year. Because here's the deal, is I know all of you are likely not challenged with any kind of motivation. You know what you need to do, and yet we may not do it. So I'm going to put a graphic up on the screen.
Let me pause, everybody.
Yeah.
Whether you're here with us live or you're watching this online, I would love for you to get out a pen and paper or some place to take notes, because I know that this is really important. Not only is it impactful, but it is action oriented, right, Kim?
100%. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm gonna share my a little bit of my personal story of getting launched while utilizing some of the principles of one thing because when I look at everything that's happened in life and business, like I didn't just do big things in business, I was doing big things in life at the same time. You know, whether it is an Ironman, whether it's summiting some of the highest mountains, whether it's achieving my net worth goals, whether it's being present with my mom as she was battling stage 4 cancer. We're not responsible for what life gives us, and yet we're responsible for how we handle it. And when we're living the most aligned life, we're able to get the most out of life. And when I was 21, the book came out, 2012. And I didn't read it just once. I read it 14 times. And then I don't want to say I stalked Jay and Gary, but I kind of stalked Jay and Gary. Like wherever they were going for their One Thing Roadshow, I kind of just showed up. And then I became friends with Jay after he kept seeing me. He's like, "Who are you?" He's like, "I feel like you're somebody I need to know." And then he watched my journey progress through utilizing the principles of the one thing. So here's one of the main elements that I have lived and breathed by is this iceberg right here, right? So this is inside of the one thing. And productivity is what people see. It's the results, it's the production numbers people are posting. And yet, a lot of times when we are not doing what we desire to be doing, people attempt to fix their productivity without fixing the stuff beneath the water line, right? So in order to achieve the productivity we desire, we need to be living in priority and doing the things that matter the most right now. And in order to be clear on what matters most right now, we need to be clear on our purpose. And so when it comes to getting the most out of life, getting the most out of business, it starts really with our purpose. Our purpose is our compass. It tells us where we're going and it tells us why we're doing. And so in terms of your business, I want you to think about purpose as why are you in real estate and what is this season for? Our purpose can change with the seasons of life that we're going through. And everybody right now is navigating a different season. Right? Some of us are newer agents. Some of us are more seasoned. Some of us are looking at transitioning out of the business. And so what's the purpose of why I'm doing what I'm doing? It's the thing that pulls you out of bed in the morning. And sometimes people say, well, I'm really challenged with, finding my purpose. Number one, we've got a great free resource that I'll just send to Jennie on finding my purpose, and she can share it with all of you. And when you walk through those steps, you get very clear on what's most important to you right now. Another exercise that can really help you identify your purpose is your core values. Because when your values are clear, decisions become easy. When your values are clear, decisions become easy. And from a priority standpoint, if we're not clear on where we're going, every option, every opportunity, and every path is going to look like a good one. And so relative to our purpose, it's crucial that we spend the time to get very clear here. Because if you try to fix your productivity without understanding why it's important to you, we're going to hit a ceiling of achievement. We're going to hit the same ceiling time after time after time. And this was one of my initial challenges as I was growing up in the business, is I thought that I could just work harder. But working harder didn't always give me the right answer, right? It didn't give me the productivity that I was desiring. It gave me more burnout than anything. Now, once we're clear on why we're doing what we're doing, it's asking ourselves the question with the priority of what matters most right now. And our priorities change with the seasons of life. Whether it's picking up your kids from school, it's like, okay, well, that's a priority. So we need to structure our days so that we can fit in what we need to fit in before we go pick up the kids from school. I have friends in this industry, and I'm sure Jennie knows plenty of them, that achieve wild amounts of productivity doing this business on 4 to 6 hours a day because that's the time they have allowed. And one of the things that we used to teach in Bold anyways was all work expands to fill the time allowed. And so if you're filling it with things that are not your priorities, that are not your top 20% activities, then that's a pretty easy fix. So ask yourself the question, what matters the most right now? I was telling Jay, I'll just stop my share for a minute. I was telling Jay the other day that I'm so grateful for being wildly clear on my priorities because I was knocked out for the first 3 weeks of this year. I went to Thailand over the holidays and I came back with a wild flu strain, a parasite, and food poisoning all in one punch. And so I couldn't work for almost 3 weeks. But what I could do is I looked at my 411 and I looked at my priorities, and the priorities are the things that are going to matter 6 months from now. And so at the end of each week, even though I couldn't really work, I worked maybe 1 to 2 hours a day, and Jay knew it. And, you know, he was totally fine because he knew that at the end of each week, I still got my priorities done. So the most important things that happened that matter got done. And so I don't worry about not really working the first 3 weeks of this year. Initially, I felt a little bit behind, and yet I knew that if my priorities were aligned with my purpose, we're good because we're going to get the level of productivity that we're after. So I'll put the iceberg back up. So once we're really clear on what matters most, which is our priorities, we're going to achieve the level of productivity that we desire. And productivity happens on how you execute daily, right? So it's thinking about daily and what does my schedule look like? Does my calendar match my goals? And a question that I really appreciate about this is thinking about the idea of if I had a third party following me around for 2 weeks, or they looked at my calendar from the previous 2 weeks, would they be able to tell what my priorities are? Based on my calendar, does somebody see what my priorities are? And if your calendar doesn't reflect your priorities, like that's the first place that we need to look. So relative to productivity, relative to achieving your goals in 2026, productivity is the results. It's the things people see. But what's most important is being in alignment first with our purpose, being in alignment with our priorities so that we can achieve the level of productivity that we desire. Before I move into a few of the different myths or lies and things that keep people stuck quite often, I just want to pause for a minute, Jennie, and ask if there is any questions on this first piece, because there was a lot that I just went through.
As some are thinking or considering a question to ask,
Yeah.
when I have taught this and actually had an aha moment is that the priorities are it's an activity. So
Yeah.
it's the purpose is who we are and what we choose to be in this lifetime and in this season. And that then tells us, like you said, the activities that are the most important thing, that then those activities show up in production. For a real estate agent, those priorities would be what? Talking to people. And if
Mhm.
talking to people is the number one priority for your job, you will see the production show up in that top part of the iceberg.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to keep it moving.
Yeah.
So in terms of what keeps people stuck, right? So in terms of the level of productivity, some people stay stuck because they buy into the different myths that sometimes can get in the way. And the first myth is that everything matters equally. And if everything matters, decision making collapses. If everything matters, nothing matters, quite frankly. There is a disproportionate number of things that you do to get a result, right? So it's like 20% of your activities are going to give you 80% of the result. And if we treat everything like it's equal, we're not going to get the level of productivity that we desire. And so one of the quotes inside of the One Thing book is extraordinary results come from giving disproportionate time to what matters most. And so when you're reflecting on your calendar and the schedule that you've followed over the last 2 or 3 weeks into the new year, do you have a disproportionate amount of time scheduled for the activities that are going to give you the results that you're looking for this year? Okay, so that's myth number one, is everything matters equally. When I was a 21-year-old in real estate, I had a lot going on. Like I was not your normal 21-year-old, right? Not only did I launch my first business, I was going to college, I was serving in the military, and I was taking care of my mom who had stage 4 cancer. And I was doing a bunch of different things all at the same time. And so when the book came out in 2012, like it was a blessing for me as a young real estate agent to quickly realize that everything didn't matter equally. And because I had so many different things going on with that season in my life, I realized that only the most important things actually made it on my calendar. And so when it comes to, when it comes to learning and growth and classes, right? It's like, are we learning for learning's sake or are we learning for doing sake? Right. And I had to be very clear with myself because I'm a wildly learning-based person. Like the books on my shelf, like I'm an avid reader. I read 50, 60, 70 books a year. Like I read so many books. And yet this last year, I read 30. Why did I read 30? Because less is more. I went deeper instead of broader. And I didn't have as much time to read. Right. And so it's like everything didn't matter equally. I didn't have as much time to read. And that's okay. The second lie or myth that gets in people's way is that multitasking is efficient. If I just do all these different things at once, if I lead generate while I have my email open, while I have my social media open, while I have 50 other tabs open, that's efficient, that's lead generation. It's not. Sorry to break the news to you, right? It's not efficient because multitasking is actually task switching. And an example of that is, let's just say you're in the middle of prospecting, you get an email that you think is urgent. You go to open the email, then your phone rings again. You're switching back and forth. And yet the phone rang again before you finished reading the email. When you go back to that email, you're not starting where you left off. You're starting at the beginning, right? So every time that you switch tasks, it's going to take you longer to complete the task at hand. Which is why when it comes to things like lead generation, your most important activity to get the results that you desire, it's thinking about how can I put this in my calendar and I can protect and defend this time block like my life depended on it, right? It's creating boundaries, it's creating a bunker, it's creating the things that empower me and enable me to say no. Because when you are task switching, lead generation takes so much longer, right? If agents focused on lead generation for a 1 hour period of time and they defended that, they would get more done than most get done in 3 to 4 hours. And so lead generation does not have to take 3 to 4 hours. It doesn't. And the better that you get at it, the shorter amount of time it takes, right? So when it comes to multitasking, it doesn't save time, it fragments focus. And the more focused you are, the more efficient you're going to be able to be, and you're going to be able to get the results that you're looking for. Another one of the myths that I love is willpower is always on will call. Jennie, why are you smiling?
Because we live it every day. We see it on our phones and our devices. They run out of power, and so do we.
We do. And you have the most brilliant energy plan, right? The W137, I believe that's what it's called, right?
Yeah.
And so willpower is not always on will call. And so when it comes to our most important priorities, are our most important priorities aligned with the amount of willpower that we do have, right? So when we think about the most important things that we need to get done during the day, and in any salesperson world, me included, because the director of growth, that's a sexy title. I am sales, right? I am sales. I do what you do on a daily basis. I lead generate, I follow up, I go on appointments, I negotiate contracts, and I script and role play because I have to learn what to say and how to say it too, right? So those priorities, when do those live on my schedule, right? So when do those live on my schedule? And it's really understanding the idea that willpower wanes, right? If I don't work out in the morning, the chance of me doing it in the evening is slim to none. If I don't lead generate and get on the phone and do my bit, like the most important things in the morning, I'm probably not going to get it done. And so when it comes to that, it's really working with yourself, and everybody's different, right? So like one of the things that um, you know, the Emory, other like a lot of people teach is like win the morning, win the day. And I'll also say though that everybody is different. I often get the question, Kim, well, what if I'm a night owl and I start my days later? Okay, cool. You can live life on your own terms, and yet you have to understand that if you start your day later, you still have a certain amount of time that is your highest energy. So whenever that is for you, go do you, as long as you're, fitting in your main priorities. And so relative to kind of the big things that we covered today, right, is really looking at the alignment between if I'm not achieving the level of productivity that I desire, am I fully aligned with my priorities and the things that are most important right now? And a key reminder is the fact that our priorities can shift and change. My priorities change on a weekly basis. That's why I do the 411 on a weekly basis, right? It's like my key priorities change on a weekly basis, depending on what I have going on. And so it's asking yourself this question on a weekly basis of, in order to achieve the level of productivity that I desire, am I fully aligned with the priorities and what matters most right now? And if I know what I need to do, and I'm struggling with motivation, and I'm struggling to get it done, am I aligned with my purpose? And if the answer is no, and you're misaligned in one of those areas, it's a pretty easy fix to dig in and say, okay, great. I'm not fully aligned with my purpose, and yet here's some things that I can do to kind of sit, process, reflect, and think and figure it out. And then priority, right? So it's asking yourself those reflection questions to make sure that you stay in alignment to get the results that you're after, in business and in life. So Jennie, that's kind of the content I had.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Kim. We
Yes.
appreciate
Thank you.
you. Bye, Kim. Thank you.